Shawn Ashley from, I was going to say eCapital because I'm an old school.
We are old school.
Quorum Call.
Quorum Call now.
Shawn, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
I referenced you on the podcast 7,000 times.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Mostly for your early bird threads on Twitter, which
Yes.
I assume you still do.
Still do.
Oh, absolutely.
I rarely check Twitter these days.
It's
I still
an
call it
addiction.
Twitter.
I do
which
too.
is probably
I don't acquiesce to the
No.
Elon Musk nonsense. I refuse to acquiesce.
yeah. I mean, the number of media outlets who say X, formerly known as Twitter,
Right, exactly.
is like the same reason we still call Prince. I think
Exactly.
so. So a little background: Emily used to work with Shawn.
Indeed. Shawn and I were colleagues for, 6 or 7 years.
6 or 7 years.
Something like that, yeah.
Kept me pointed in the right direction.
We kept each other pointed in the right direction. We were here forever. Elections, legislatures.
Yeah.
I was talking about iVote the other day. You remember iVote?
Oh, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We ventured into a lot of things with eCapital, with lowercase. Lowercase first letters.
It was a trend. It was a trend.
It was a brand. It was a branding tactic. But yes.
Apple's branding had far-reaching consequences for everything else to do with technology.
Exactly.
For a long
Right.
time.
But yes, we've known Shawn forever, and thank you for getting us a room, facilitating.
Of course. Happy to
We love
do
it.
it.
Right, we could have recorded in the rotunda, which would have been very echoey, to say the least. Shawn, how long have you worked here at the Capitol?
Oh, gee. Actually, March 4th, so just over a week ago, marked 30 years since I first walked into this building and began to work.
Oh, okay.
I haven't always been a reporter during that time. I worked for a couple of state agencies. I worked for the House for a year. But most of the time has been spent reporting on the legislature.
Yeah.
This is my 31st legislative session.
31 sessions, not 31 years. So
30 years,
31 sessions, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And only then 15 legislatures, if we're counting them as 2-year legislatures.
Right. That was the math I was trying to remember.
Not to get into
it was bad.
Into the weeds.
But throw in some special sessions here
yeah,
and there.
Oh my God.
When I started doing Let's Pod This, with my co-host then Scott Nelson, was in 2017, and we thought we'll do this during session as a way to help people keep tabs on what's happening, and then we'll take summers off. And then that year had 2 or 3 special sessions, and we just evolved into a weekly podcast by necessity.
Yeah.
And once you do it long enough, you're like, well, we'll just keep going.
Yeah, just keep going.
At this point.
You also, speaking of podcasts, you also do
Yes.
a weekly show on KGOU.
That's right.
With Dick Pryor.
Yes, Capital Insider. It's an interview-based format, either Dick interviewing me about what's going on at the legislature and in state government, or from time to time we do have guests on. The Thursday prior to Governor Stitt's final State of the State, we interviewed him about the upcoming State of the State, which was a really interesting conversation, particularly in light of some of the discussions taking place now. So yeah, we've been doing that for ever since Dick has been at KGOU. It's actually something we started at OETA.
Yeah.
And he realized the other day that all told, we've been doing that something like 20 years.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's interesting. It's part of my weekly digest.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Oklahoma politics.
Yeah.
It is funny to me to do a show and to produce another show and then to be on KOSU myself and then still listen to KGMU and a couple other shows,
Right.
just to try to keep tabs on things,
Everything.
which
Yeah.
I think is an unreasonable expectation of the general public. But our job, as I see it, right, is to be the most informed so that we can help our audiences
Distill
be
it. Yeah.
right, somewhat informed.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I forget who I was talking with about this, but one of the challenges for reporters covering the Capitol now is that there is so much going on.
All the time.
During the committee period, there can be up to 6 committees meeting, not to mention what might be happening outside of those committees, in the governor's office or at the State Department of Education or the Department of Agriculture or somewhere else in state government. So it's really challenging for reporters just to cover this place effectively. and then to communicate that to the general public. I mean, I'm fortunate. I own and operate a legislative tracking and news service. I have unlimited space to produce news stories. We can write as much as we feel like we need to write to tell the story. But that's not true of a regular newspaper or of a television or radio station. They only have so much time, so much space. And there's a lot that goes on out here that, to a certain extent, doesn't make it to
absolutely.
that time and space.
Yeah.
How many staff do you have now?
Right now, we're running about 5 people total.
Okay.
We're a small staff, but a dedicated and hardworking staff. We cover right now doing floor work, bell to bell, from beginning to end. And we're able to cover in person almost all the committee meetings by carefully scheduling ourselves and running around a whole lot.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, the dedication that you have shown to just keep up with the amount of work that it is incredible. I'm so proud of you and the business.
Well, thank you.
It's a necessity, right? You are a foundation of Oklahoma civic education in my eyes, right? As Andy mentioned, like, we're not the only ones. There are tons of nerds out there that wake up to you between February and May, and even after that, you're pretty entertaining during the interim. So, I mean, you really do a great service to the state. So.
It is. There's a lot of news here, and
tons. More than people really understand. It's like the Real Housewives. We were talking about this the other day with my students, right? It's so delicious. They have no idea the wonderful, delightful things that get discussed.
Well, and one of the cool things is, and you mentioned the different formats in which you work and in which I work. That's good, I think, for the general public and the public that wants to be educated on civic issues.
Yeah.
Oklahoma Watch has a great story out about the new smelter coming to Inola.
Yeah.
That's a story those of us who are covering the Capitol every day don't have the time to do.
Yeah.
But there are other news outlets like Oklahoma Watch, like The Frontier, like State Impact, that can delve into those issues and provide that other layer of coverage of government-related news. Yeah. That's really come about, in the last several years, really, and that's great to see. It provides us that much more information, and for someone like me, that tells me where legislation may go in the future.
Exactly.
I mean, there are environmental concerns and things like that, and at some point, that will reach the state capitol.
Yeah. I think, I, like a lot of folks, am always messing around with AI and trying to find ways for it to make my life easier, which hasn't happened yet. But one of the things I've noticed, it's really good at looking backwards, but it does not yet have the capacity to file something like that away of like, I've got a tingling about this. Yeah. I'm going to remember it,
right?
Because I think next year it'll come up,
right?
And then it like primes the pump for you to listen to it.
Yeah.
And I think that human element of the subtlety and the nuance and just like your intuition,
right,
is a way bigger part of politics than I would have guessed.
Oh,
right.
Like there's a lot of stuff that is not black and white, or you're like, I just have a hunch about this.
Right. And oftentimes, it takes several years. We think about a bill becoming law usually fairly quickly within one legislative session. Oftentimes, in some of these bigger matters, that's not the case. Senator Dave Rader recently carried the bills that sort of reformed our criminal code, right? Those were the recommendations of a task force that was created many years ago, worked for a number of years, made its recommendations, and those initial recommendations were rejected by the legislature. But Senator Rader didn't give up. And he worked with people who had concerns and made adjustments here and there and came back again, and they were rejected again. So he continued to work. And then on his third try a couple of years ago, he got those passed. And now they're going through this process of working with DAs who are saying, well, this one doesn't work exactly like we thought it would. Let's make these adjustments. And so it took years to do, and now we're still fine tuning it to get it where everybody hoped that it would go.
Yeah. Still in search of a more perfect union. I guess,
Exactly.
in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, it's interesting when people think that because the law gets passed, it's just going to be that silver bullet implemented perfectly immediately. Like the admin rules process, like the bureaucracy doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
It's always amusing to me. So tell us about this session. What layout, where we are in the process. I know committee deadline was last week. We're moving to the floor. It was a record number of bills that were filed this year.
Yeah,
How many have died? What's going on?
Yeah, so we had a record number of bills filed for a second legislative session, the even numbered year session. The filings for 2026 were comparable to the filings for the first session in 2009.
Oh my God, I remember that session.
Yeah, so what's happening is we're simply filing more and more bills each legislative session.
Crazy.
What's interesting about a second session is that you have bills that carry over from the first session. If they were not voted down in some respect, they remain alive. So they filed close to 2,600 this year. There were about 2,600 carried over from last year. So they began with about 5,200 bills and joint resolutions that they could take up. And, you know, we have seen them already take up bills, pass them and send them to the governor that were most of the way through the process last year, but didn't quite make it.
Okay.
Senate Bill 734, which limits protest around churches, was one of those. It was one vote away from going to the governor, but they didn't get that done by the time they adjourned sine die last year. So they did that the first week of the legislative session this year. And that's one of 5 bills they've sent to the governor and have been signed. The first deadline was back on March 5th. That was for bills to be heard in a committee of their chamber of origin, House bills in the House, Senate bills in the Senate. Between 1,500 and 1,600 survived that deadline. So that's a pretty big cut. But keep in mind, some of those that were cut were those carried over from last year that had been resurrected. There were a good number, more than 1,000, that were what we call shell bills. These are bills that simply say something like, create the Tax Reform Act of 2026. They have no real substantive language in them. The idea was that maybe later on before the deadline, real language would get put in there. But there were more than 1,000 of those that all filed in the House that never saw language put into them, didn't make the first committee deadline, and so they died. So they're working with 1,500 to 1,600 bills right now.
Which is almost manageable.
Which is almost manageable. Keep in mind, by the time they adjourn sine die, another 1,000 of those will just go away. They'll die for one reason or another. The last several years, on average, they've been sending about 500 to the governor for his consideration. That number's up from several years ago. It's climbed rapidly under Stitt, which is interesting. Governor Stitt points this out, and so does House Speaker Kyle Hilbert, that, you know, Republicans are supposed to be for limited government, smaller government, yet they're proposing all these bills. And so Governor Stitt, in fact, during the 2025 session, there were more bills that he allowed to become law without his signature than he actually signed. Substantially more. 450 something became law without his signature.
You're kidding me.
Versus 100 and something that he signed, and then 60 or so that he vetoed.
That's impressive.
He said if it's not on his agenda, and he doesn't think it particularly advances the well-being of Oklahomans, he's just going to let it become law without his signature.
Which I don't think most people Like, this is not what's taught in
No.
Schoolhouse
Yeah,
Rock.
absolutely not.
Like, you think
Yeah.
both chambers and the governor's got to sign it or veto it, and those are the only options, and that's not
No,
remotely
not
the
at all.
case.
Right.
So what happens is when the legislature is in session, so before they adjourn sine die, the governor has 5 days from receipt of a bill, excluding Sundays, to sign or veto it. If he takes no action, it becomes law absent the governor's signature. And every governor I've covered has done that at least once or twice normally.
It's like
Sure.
instead of a pocket veto, it's a pocket signature.
Right, yeah,
Effectively.
exactly. And everybody's done it once or twice normally,
Yeah.
But not 450
Yeah.
times.
but not 450
egregious.
sometimes.
I mean, I think my perspective on that is like the governor's been pretty clear that like he's his own man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Very-
he ran
yeah,
as an outsider. His voting record seemed prior to
Yeah.
running for office seemed to indicate that. And he's like, listen, you kids do whatever you want to do, but that's not what I'm here for.
Right.
Which in some ways makes me a little uneasy. I think I'm just like,
Yeah.
what does this say about how we interpret what the framers wanted
Good governance,
and how governance
period.
is supposed to operate?
Yeah.
But keep in mind, he and his staff are reviewing the bills.
Sure.
Sure,
Because
yeah.
there were 60 some that got vetoed.
Right.
Right? So
Right,
they
right,
are looking at them. But if they don't fit within the guidepost he has established, he's like, that can become law.
Right.
I don't need to sign it. It's not top of mind for me.
Yeah.
I think
Very
what's
interesting.
It is interesting. I think what is funny to me is that the governor, his relationship with the legislature has been
Yes.
somewhat unique in my limited experience. But I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your perspective going back more decades. But like, he often seems to want to have more clout than he does, and you can see the legislature be like, you know what,
Yeah.
you're kind of an accessory to what we're doing here. And when
Yes.
you just let bills become law without taking a stance, it kind of feeds into that. I mean,
Yeah,
Exactly.
You're right. His relationship with the legislature has been very interesting. When he first came into office, the legislature was quick to want to work with him.
Mm-hmm.
And you may recall one of the big things they did was to pass 5 pieces of legislation that gave him appointment authority of executive directors over 5 specific state agencies, and modified the boards that oversaw those agencies, really making them more advisory. So they gave the governor more power. They had been unwilling to do that under Fallon. She wanted it, and actually started the process with the Department of Health and the Board of Health and the Department of Tourism and Recreation and their board. Late in her last year, they approved legislation that made those boards advisory and gave the governor appointment authority for those directors. But then I'm not sure what the exact turning point was, but the relationship changed.
Yeah.
Particularly when it came to the budget.
I was
Yeah,
like, sorry,
yeah.
he vetoed the budget a few times.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because the lawmakers and the governor used to talk about the 3-legged stool, the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. Under House Speaker Charles McCall and Senate President Pro Tem Greg Treat, that became more of a 2-legged stool, if you will. Less a tricycle, more a bicycle might be the best comparison. Because they were going to drive the budget process.
Yeah.
And the governor's role was somewhat limited in that. And Governor Stitt complained a year or two about being excluded from the budget process. And I think he has allowed more state budgets to become law 4 than he has signed of the 7. So it's created a rather interesting dynamic. But at the same time, when Senate Pro Tem Treat was trying to pass the Parental Choice Tax Credit Act for the first time, and was unsuccessful, Stitt was lobbying lawmakers on his behalf, making phone calls on Treat's behalf, trying to flip votes in a vote that was left open for some time. So, sometimes they're clearly singing from the same hymnal,
Yeah.
and other times one or two of them may be a little off key or crawling under the pew, and you don't know exactly what they're going to do.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started getting involved when Governor Fallon was still in office, and then it was in the blue room or in the governor's conference room with the budget chairs, the A&B chairs, and they were making phone calls to like energy company executives to get them to weigh in on some of these issues. And we were frustrated. Some of us in the public were frustrated of like, it's not just politicians, but it's also like executives getting a say in this.
Oh yeah.
And that seemed like not the way to do a budget, but this also seems like maybe not the ideal way to do a budget.
I'm not sure. This being my 31st session and having watched a number of budgets be written, I will say the process now is more transparent. You can go on the House or Senate websites and see a lot of information about the budget that years ago we simply didn't have access to.
Absolutely.
And I think it becomes a matter of what role the legislature can convince the governor they are or are not going to play in that particular year's budget. Just a couple of years ago when we had the open budget hearings, remember Governor Stitt hosted those first few in his conference room and tried to play sort of an active role when it was clear to him that his input didn't seem to be influencing things too much, and that really there was a battle back and forth between the House and the Senate. He stepped away for more than a week and sort of let them haggle everything out, and then came in at the end and tried to make one last pitch, which he was successful at. If you do these 4 things, I won't veto your budget. And they did those 4 things. But, they sort of allowed him at that last moment to dictate those requirements. So it's varied over the years. I mean, I can remember a number of years standing up on the 4th floor rotunda where you can see down to the governor's large conference room and watching who went in and out of there for a couple of hours just to try to figure out what was going on.
That's funny. I think your historical perspective is helpful because I lost my train of thought. Guess I'll cut this part out too. I was going to ask, given your historical perspective on the legislature and everything in the Capitol, you've been here when power was flipped, right? When the Democrats were in charge. And then there was a few years where it was a pretty shared power structure, and now, of course, Republicans have a supermajority.
Right.
Do you think that shift, and especially the supermajority as it is now, has a lot to do with that, where they almost don't need the governors in it because they can override anything if they really want to?
I think in some instances it may. Despite the bumps in the road involving the budget, for example, unlike in some other states, we've yet to have the Republican majority really go head-to-head with the governor on an issue. We have seen that in other states, and in fact in Oklahoma, when Democrats were in charge, and for example under Governor David Walters, there were a number of times where they were on opposite sides of an issue and really went head-to-head. And you're right, when he vetoed a bill, they said, no, we're just going to override that, and they did. And it seems like, Stitt's in his final year. It seems like he's going to make it out of this process without a major conflict like that. I guess the closest they have come was a few years ago when he was calling them back into special session saying, cut taxes. And the Senate was saying no. And I think that reached its apex in those open budget meetings after the Senate had moved forward the reduction of the state sales tax on groceries. Stitt was pressing for an income tax, and then Pro Tem Treat said, "Governor, no. You know, we did the sales tax on groceries. That's all we're going to do. That's $300 million. You know, it's a flat no."
Right.
And I think Stitt realized Treat meant it, and they weren't going to move forward on anything on the individual income tax. So they've never had that big issue where they've really come to blows with one another. And they've disagreed here and there. And, you know, every governor vetoes something that gets every governor I've covered has vetoed something that's been overridden. So that's not unusual.
Yeah. It is funny when they get to the end of session and they've done all the work they're going to do, and depending on how it's gone, I feel like there was a couple of years ago where they came back for a day and were just like, "This is the override day," and it was just one after another after another, and the vibe on the floor was almost energetic. It was like kind of a party. They were, and I think they were like kind of irritated, and they were like, "Let's stick it to them," and and they were just overriding things left and right, and we were at home watching, being like, "I don't know how to feel. Mom and Dad are fighting, but someone's having a party." So,
Right.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at on the floor? What are you watching intently? What's controversial? What do we need to be aware of?
You know, one of the interesting things, there are a couple of interesting things this session, I think. One of them is the efforts in education.
You can edit that or not.
Well, the efforts in common education in particular.
The reading, yes.
You know, they're looking at how they're going to increase literacy in early childhood education. And both sides have slightly different proposals. I mean, they're not largely different. But I've heard both Senator Adam Pugh, who's chair of Senate Education, and Senate President Pro Tem Paxton, and House Speaker Kyle Hilbert say, you know, the final requirements are going to be negotiated.
Okay.
It's almost like literacy is and it will be, but a budget point that, you know, both sides have different ideas, and we've got to come to an agreement on exactly what we're going to do. So both sides will move their bills, and then eventually they'll reconcile those. And an issue that's sort of flying under the radar, and that one of my reporters wrote about, Sidney Lee, is water infrastructure funding. According to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, there are tens of billions of dollars of needs to improve local water and wastewater services all across the state. And during the American Rescue Plan Act funding days, lawmakers did put a large amount of money into that, but still more is needed. And it's even popped up in a study that the Department of Commerce did several years ago, looking at industrial sites in these smaller communities. Oftentimes they had great land, great location, but they didn't have adequate electrical power or broadband or water and sewer. I mean, if you're bringing in a manufacturing plant, you're going to use a lot of power, you're going to use a lot of water, and the facilities were well located for that, but they couldn't service them. And so some more money went into funding some of those facilities all across the state. But at least three bills have passed the Senate, and I think there may be one or two in the House, that looked at setting up a new program to fund those improvements. The legislature in recent years has been really successful with a series of cash loan programs, mostly involving state agencies. One for for new building projects where agencies can borrow from it, and then pay it back
Right.
over like a 20-year time period, but they don't pay an interest rate,
Right.
and they don't pay an interest rate to a bank in New York, better yet.
Right.
So it keeps money in the state.
Right.
Um,
It's almost like an advance on their appropriations.
Yeah, in a
Right.
way, yeah, because ultimately the money has to be appropriated to them so that they can pay it back. They're also doing something similar with more general capital improvements, a program they approved last year or the year before. Again, agencies borrow from it and then pay it back over time. A couple of the proposals that have gone through the Senate have that kind of approach in them. Cities and towns, counties would be able to borrow money from this fund managed by the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, which has a fantastic record of managing major multi-million, if not billion-dollar grant programs for water systems all over the state. They would borrow from that fund and then pay it back over time. The interesting thing about that is that in order to pay it back, it makes the cities, counties, municipalities have some skin in the game. They're going to have to think about their water rates and why they got into the position that they're in, that they weren't bringing in enough to invest in improvements. And now they're going to have to do that and pay this fund back. So it will force some of them to make some difficult choices. But it also involves them directly in the process. The magic number seems to be around $250,000. Excuse me, $250 million, 250 million, pardon me, 250 million.
Wow.
But that will be a budget number.
Right.
I mean, we'll have to wait and see as we get near the end exactly what that will be. But that's something that has sort of slipped under the radar, I think.
Yeah.
But it may be one of the bigger accomplishments of this legislative session.
Does legislating data centers have anything to do with that, or?
I don't think it ties directly into it, but obviously issues related to data centers could play a role in that on both the industrial development side and the needs of communities for good water and wastewater treatment. And data centers is going to be an interesting discussion. I mean,
this is all interesting. I am obviously a huge nerd. All of our listeners know that. But like things to do with infrastructure that enable society to function are unsung heroes of modern life. And we talk about education. We talk about social issue bills. We talk about all this stuff at the top. And we don't really spend time on until it breaks, right?
Absolutely.
And, I live near 23rd and Penn in Oklahoma City, and just on Penn, just south of 23rd, pipes have burst, I don't know, 6 times in the last year. I've lived there just over a year, and they are constantly having to tear up the street, 20 yards from where they did it the last time because it broke again. And when I've talked to my city council member and to the mayor about it, they're like, our infrastructure is 100 years old and stuff's starting to break. And you start realizing, we talk about roads and bridges because we see those every day when we drive. But when I saw the line maintenance team show up with a backhoe today, I was like, oh no, this means, we're going to be out of power. My father-in-law won't be able to flush the toilet, or out of water. There's all these very real concerns. And I don't know how to make these issues sexy enough for the public to care. Because for 100 years, we've just set it and forget it. Like it's a Ronco oven and just be like, oh, it'll work. The water always turns on when I turn on the tap. But until it doesn't.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes communities are facing fines and other problems with their wastewater plants. And like you said, these are infrastructure. They're basic necessities for modern life. I mean,
have you been following Corpus Christi?
I hear they're running out of water.
Anyway, sorry.
No, I mean,
it was just tangentially related, but
Well, for our listeners who might not be, I saw the headlines that they're about out of water. 6-7 months out.
Shut down the whole city.
That's crazy. First of all, because they're on the coast, and so people think they've got tons of water. You can't use that.
No.
But Texas as a whole is a case study in how not to do water management, I would think.
But really, all energy resources, honestly. ERCOT is not, the shining star.
That's true.
Anyway.
Well, so there was an article in Texas Monthly magazine probably 15 or 20 years ago about the issue, especially for North Texas and their water needs, right? Dallas-Fort Worth area is exploding. They don't have enough water there.
Tried to drink our milkshake.
Yeah. There's
Literally.
lawsuits about some of the pumps in Lake Texoma because the boundary between states cuts a pump in half.
Yep.
And at the time, the end of the article ended with, of course, there is a solution. They could buy water from Oklahoma, which has plenty, especially southeastern Oklahoma. But the legislature here, as I recall, passed a law that forbade the state from selling water to Texas for 100 years.
Yep.
And I was like, I haven't ever gone back to look for when that 100 years is up. Do you happen to know, Shawn?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I believe that was during the Keating administration.
Okay.
I think it's a fairly recent event.
So we've got another 70 years left.
At least.
And people in southeast Oklahoma would dispute the idea that there's plenty of water.
Sure.
Yeah. And that kind of thing. I was reading an article in, I don't believe it was Texas Monthly. I think it was the Texas Tribune.
The Tribune is,
about a major data center going in north of Amarillo.
Oh.
And they're going to be using tremendous amounts of water. And there's concern about the down aquifer effects of that, which would include Oklahoma.
Yeah. Right. Amarillo, not known for being a lush environment.
No. And there's already concern about draining the aquifers in the western part of the state.
Yeah.
And this is going to put more pressure on those. So it makes it even more important that cities and towns have effective, water treatment and delivery systems so that they're not just pouring it into the ground. When your system's not working particularly well, that's often what's happening. Every city can usually tell you how much their leakage is. Water that just doesn't make it to a meter. Because there's a small crack in a pipe, but a small crack that leaks 5 gallons 365 days a year adds up over time.
My parents, when we lived in Austin, there was a crack in the slab of our house. We found out when we were moving because the water was not leaking at the house; it was going underground. And my dad was like, "Why is our water bill so high?" And then it had just happened, but it was leaking 30,000 gallons a month. And I was like, "Well, that's a swimming pool every month." And so they had to get it fixed. And I was just like, that went from not a problem to a significant problem in a hurry that you had to address. It was a personal infrastructure issue, but it was one of those things as a life lesson in home ownership. They will betray you. And also, when that happens at the municipal or state level, it's a very big deal. Okay, we need to figure out how to make water policy cool again.
I'm telling you.
Or something.
There is an annual water conference hosted by the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. It's in the fall. I've actually been a couple of times because of various individuals who were speaking there. And, water is really interesting. They're talking about it from the aquifer to the wastewater treatment areas. And it's a fascinating field. It's
Is it called WaterCon?
No, but I think
Branding
it's just
loss.
water conference.
I've got a friend that's a biologist for the state. We should check it out. Maybe we can go.
Absolutely.
On location.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
totally down.
Talked to the director of the Oklahoma Water Resources Board there. She's a great interview.
That's a great idea.
God,
Yeah.
fabulous. We should get her and Dr. Pappas on.
Oh, that's a great
There's
idea.
a water
Right.
policy.
She has water
Yeah.
policy too.
Yeah, ECU.
Do you have any other questions about this session? I was going to ask some historical questions. since we got
Historical
Shawn.
questions? Okay. We need to at least touch on the Mullins scandal eventually,
Oh,
but
sure,
do
yeah,
the
no.
historical stuff.
No.
No,
Wow.
do historical first, and
Okay,
then
we're
we'll
doing
end
some-
with the topical stuff.
Ooh, okay. There we go. I was just going to ask, after 31 years up here, what are there trends or changes you've noticed? Like when you look back from your hovel under the stairs,
It's been upgraded significantly since we started.
That's true.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. What do you think is interesting, or what stands out to you about what happens here at the state capitol?
Yeah, I think one of the things are the improvements that the legislature has made. When I first started at bill filing, we received stacks of physical paper copies of bills. Now all of that is available online through the House and the Senate. You can watch their proceedings now. When I started, that wasn't the case. COVID really expedited that for them, and coinciding with improvements being made in this building, they made improvements in their systems. And so you can watch floor proceedings, you can watch committee proceedings that you couldn't do before. And I think that's really good for the general public. On just sort of the journalism side, like I mentioned at the beginning, it has become more challenging to cover the legislature. When I first started, each chamber had about a dozen committees.
Yeah.
There are 20-something committees and subcommittees in the House right now. There are more than a dozen in the Senate, and that's why at some points you can have 6 meeting at roughly the same time. So that volume there has increased. The volume of bills has increased significantly over time as well. And, that makes it more difficult to sort through and determine what's going to be important and what's not going to be important. And granted, sometimes you don't know. I mean, issues come along in the course of a legislative session that lawmakers realize need to be addressed, and they do jump on those. But it is hard when you have 2,600 pieces of legislation and you have to try to figure out what direction we're going to be going this legislative session. So most of the changes have been for the good. Some maybe not so good. But still, it's, I've been doing this, 30 years now. As I told someone about around a week ago, I still get excited when I walk across the South Plaza because I'm walking into the state capitol to go to work. Coming down here, as I was walking down the hallway, House Speaker Kyle Hilbert popped out of a committee room where he was meeting with some constituents, and we walked sort of side by side for a moment and just, hi, how you doing? I mean, I'm talking to the Speaker of the Oklahoma House just casually in the hallway. That's kind of neat. I ran into a former governor a couple of years ago who was here with the board of directors for a business meeting. And, got an opportunity to talk to them, and I could sort of tell that they missed it too. They
don't miss it right away.
Right, they don't.
It takes a while to.
I think that's true. I mean, I think they all have to go through that decompression. But I think working with the lawmakers, working with constituents, trying to help constituents. I think most lawmakers and most elected officials really do have a desire to be a servant for their constituents. They're not here to do bad things or make a lot of money or anything like that. They want to do what they think is right for the people in their district, and they work to do that. And some of them are a little more fun to be around than others.
That's the truth.
But I've never met a bad one.
Yeah,
and that's kind of cool. In 30-something years, that most of the people you work with or have to deal with on the job, and it's been thousands now, are all kind of cool in the end.
Yeah. We're all just people.
Yeah.
Truly.
Putting our pants on one leg at a time.
Exactly.
Usually.
That's good. I appreciate that perspective. It's affirming as we're halfway through session right now, and I think a lot of folks are not even halfway, a quarter of the way through session, folks are starting to feel the squeeze on some of these big issues, and myself included.
Yeah.
So last Thursday, let's pivot now.
Pivot.
Thank you, Shawn.
Pivot.
I mean, you're still going to chime in on this, but
I mean, right?
Emily, I'm going to
Sir.
interview you. Last Thursday
Yeah.
was a crazy day in Oklahoma politics.
It was a wild day in Oklahoma politics.
There were some of us in my office. We'd been at the Capitol because they were going to hear a bill, HJR 1019, that ostensibly was written to like overturn open primary should it have passed, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, as it's written, it doesn't do anything to change the law. It just restates it. So we'll see if it keeps going now that.
Right.
Anyway, that also happened on Thursday. So we left because the committee room was full. We're at my office watching it on TV, thanks to the new equipment.
Right.
And while we're watching that Rules Committee hearing, news came out that President Trump he's not really relieving Kristi Noem of duties. He's moving her
to a new Marvel station, Agents Shield.
Yeah, something
or other, yeah.
And appointing U.S. Senator Markwayne Mullin from Oklahoma to be head of Homeland Security. And then about an hour after that, we got news that the Secretary of State's office said we didn't have enough valid signatures for open primaries. We can come back to that in a future episode. But because this is the topic, I think, of the week, with Mullin leaving the Senate.
Yeah.
I guess they scheduled his confirmation hearing for next week.
Yeah.
And it sounds from all reports it's going to sail through. The Senate takes care of their own. Yeah. They all kind of know him. Some of them are happy to see him leave.
I think it's that part. But yeah.
So he'll take over at Homeland Security, I think, effective April 1st.
Yeah.
And then this opens the door to a
wide open, right?
Cascade,
a mess. We've already been hearing a bunch of inklings, and will I, won't I bias. I think Hearn just announced officially. I was perplexed. So I was sitting at my desk. I had just done back-to-back Zoom calls and went to AP News to do something else, and in 172 point font was Markwayne Mullin, DHS Secretary. I was just like. Right, so I'm screaming in my office, like down the hallway, like Jay, like, do you hear that? Like, I was befuddled. I don't know why, because I think we sort of knew Markwayne Mullin was a favorite of Trump, and he's certainly somebody who has ingratiated himself. Right, he's been at the forefront of bucking up on people, which Trump loves. Right, the physicality of his defense of the MAGA agenda, I think, really attracts Trump to Mullin, and so I was shocked, but then not shocked, but then shocked.
Well, and I've heard from even some of my national colleagues that they've said, well, isn't Mullin like the Trump whisperer? Like, because even other members of the Senate who might be close to Trump didn't have the same kind of relationship, that it was more tenuous than what he has had. And I don't know if it's because they have a shared interest in
MMA
fighting.
Right.
But this is a big move.
I would assume there's some hurt feelings in conservative circles in DC, and I would almost imagine probably here as well.
So I want to kind of do a status check on who's in play that we know about. But
that's a Shawn. Let's get it.
I do think it's a little interesting because Mullin essentially has a lifetime job in the U.S. Senate.
Oh, for sure.
And he's giving that up. I mean, he was on the ballot this year, but broadly expected to win.
Oh, yeah.
A re-election for another 6 years.
Yeah.
And he's going to go take this job at Homeland Security, which is at most a 2.5-year job.
Yeah.
But there's been pretty high turnover in the president's cabinet in both of his terms, and so it could be a lot less than that.
Sure.
And that you can't go back to the Senate immediately. So it's just an interesting, like, where is this
career move?
Yeah. And I don't know what I would do if I was in that position, but really interesting. And so, Shawn, let's talk through the succession plan, and let's all just popcorn around on who's in play.
Well, first of all, it's a two-step process, keep in mind.
Yeah.
After Mullin officially resigns, Governor Stitt will have 30 days to appoint someone as an interim who would actually serve through the election
Right.
in November. That person has to take a vow. Well, first of all, they have to be a Republican,
Right.
not by law, but the law requires that they be a member of the same party as the person who resigns.
So they don't mess up the balance of
So
power.
they don't mess up the balance of power. And then they have to take a vow that they won't seek election to the office. It's kind of interesting that the authors of that legislation in 2021 were now House Speaker Kyle Hilbert and now President Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton, both before they were ever maneuvering for leadership positions in the state legislature. So that's the first step, and the first person will be someone Stitt appoints.
And that vow is not legally binding.
Yeah, that was my question. I'm texting him like, how is that constitution? Like, how is that going to be held up in a court?
So there's debate about that. President Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton was the advocate for that language.
Right.
And he believes that it is. And part of that belief comes from the fact that this person isn't being elected, right? They're being appointed.
Okay.
The constitutional requirements apply to someone who's elected,
Okay.
not to someone who's appointed. So
Okay.
the legal question then becomes, can states impose additional requirements on someone who's appointed to a position when the Constitution specifically says what they have to be elected?
Right.
It's never been adjudicated anywhere in the United States that he's aware of, that I'm aware of.
So it requires someone to willingly sign the pledge,
Right.
and then in a few months be like,
Challenge it.
just kidding, I'm running anyway, come at me, bro.
Right.
Right.
And also
love
along with that, because, think about it in the current case in Oklahoma, if Senator Mullen is confirmed next week or shortly thereafter, filing is April 1st through the 3rd.
Right.
Stitt may not have even appointed someone by the time filing rolls around. Or he appoints someone right away and then filing's a week later, and, let's say they file, right?
Right.
It would take a while to adjudicate that, right? But their opponents could say, look, this person took a vow.
Right.
They said they wouldn't run for the office. And here they are a week later filing.
Right.
Can you trust this person?
Yeah, it's kind of a social contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Paxton believes the court would rule in his favor that it is fine to do that for someone appointed. And he also believes that it could be used on the campaign trail as a measure of that person's qualifications to hold the office.
Interesting.
But the vow is only that you say that you won't run for that Senate seat.
Right.
Not that you won't run for something else.
Correct.
I had this thought yesterday afternoon. Did I text you about this? I was like, well, what if he appoints someone who is also running for governor or the legislature? I don't imagine a gubernatorial candidate would take time away from their campaign to go be a senator. But if you were...
But I bet you T.W. Shannon would.
Someone like that, or someone like... Even if you're running for re-election here, right? You're essentially, you're going to be doing it after sessions, mostly over.
Oh, yeah.
And then be done by election day. So like, I don't think he's going to say he would be the person, but let's say Speaker Kyle Hilbert, like he could be appointed and serve as U.S. Senator for 6 months.
Sure.
And also still be Speaker of the House, running for re-election for his last term. And like, can you imagine being in the U.S. Senate and then also running for the state legislature? Like these things are possible. Maybe not plausible, but like possible.
Yeah, it certainly is possible.
And if someone, let's say he doesn't appoint anyone until after filing, well, so 3 people file for an office, and then the governor appoints one of them, and now they're in the Senate, but they're also campaigning for that seat.
Right.
What's it like to be one of the opponents?
Yeah.
Who is... Because they're running against now, Senator Emily Stacey or whatever, and like there's a lot of like branding element and platform and fundraising capacity that is really interesting.
Yeah. And that's exactly why Paxton said he wanted someone to sign that declaration, that vow, was he didn't want someone to get the gift of incumbency.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
Because, you go to Washington and your opportunity for campaign fundraising increases exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Emily, would you be a senator for 6 months?
No. Andy, I would not.
Really? Not even for 6 months?
Absolutely not.
I looked at the Senate calendar, as you would expect me to do.
I do, yes.
It's 33 weeks. But they're out 13 of those weeks.
Absolutely.
Because of
Summer
their summer break.
Mm-hmm.
Their election break runs from October up through the election itself.
Gosh.
So
That's a pretty sweet gig.
And obviously you're not of the same party, so you couldn't be eligible to be appointed, but if you're a Republican, you got appointed to be senator here, what are the expectations of you, really?
Right.
Just to toe the party line and fly back and forth a bunch?
You're the second junior senator of the year for Oklahoma. One of 3 when all is said and done.
Good Lord. What a year.
Your best hope would be to expand the hoodie caucus to a bipartisan caucus.
Yeah.
You and John Fetterman.
Yes.
And
that's great.
But I assume you're just going to take over the staff because you're trying to hire all that stuff that would normally happen. It's just not plausible. I talked to somebody yesterday who has some friends that are supposed to start interning in Mullen's office and are now like, what do I do now? Like, do I get to go? And so as they're like finishing up their senior year in college, and they're expecting to go in May, they're starting to. So there's some uncertainty there. So there's
hopefully they'll take them to GHS, right? They'll get a whole new experience.
Right. All right, so let's talk about who's.
So Ham is Ham first.
Harold Ham.
Oh, for appointees?
Yeah.
Apparently, Continental Resources founder Harold Ham has expressed an interest in doing it. There are some other names that have been floated out there. Former State Senator Nathan Dahm.
No, I didn't hear that one.
Oh, yeah.
Is he still chair of the GOP?
No.
No.
That was 23 to 25.
Okay.
They elected someone new last year. State Chief Operating Officer David Ostro.
That's right.
He would,
Who are the other 2?
Some people I know have said no, right? Like, I think I saw gubernatorial advisor Donnell Harder said not her. John
she
Budd
was one of them.
said not me.
Pinnell.
Yeah, Pinnell. Well, Pinnell said he's not going to run for office.
Right.
But I felt like he left the door open a little bit that he would accept this until the end of his term. Because then he's done in November anyway.
Right. That's fair.
Stitt has I think Stitt has surprised most people, myself included, with each of his previous major appointments. John O'Connor as Attorney General, and Lyndall Fields as Superintendent of Public Instruction. So I'm interested to see who he picks.
Yeah, me too.
I really think it's more likely to be someone like an O'Connor or a Fields off the beaten path.
Yeah.
Even though they're just a placeholder for 33 weeks. But someone to keep the office up and functioning properly. But I think it'll be a name a lot of us are not familiar with. But that's a guess.
Yeah.
That's totally a guess.
Does the law permit the governor to appoint himself?
No.
Okay. That was the thing that a lot of people immediately were like worried about.
No, it's a complicated thing, but no, he can't appoint himself.
There we go. Okay, so appointee aside, looking at the election.
Yeah, so who?
You mentioned Congressman Kevin Hearn from Tulsa.
Why though?
So he filed.
He did officially, he announced.
Yeah.
Is that smart?
Is that smart? Well,
And that's the end of the episode because my phone quit recording while we were interviewing Shawn right there. So apologies. All you missed was a couple of minutes of us speculating, honestly, about who is going to run for the seat and why. We do know that, as we mentioned there, that Congressman Kevin Hearn has just announced he's going to self-fund about $5 million, and that is likely going to push out a bunch of people. However, we expect it still to be a robust field for the Senate seat. perhaps 5-10 Republicans, plus the Democrats and independents that may already be out there. And if Congressman Hearn runs, well, he is running, so that opens up the 1st District congressional seat as well. I expect we'll see some statewide elected officials jump into the race there. Perhaps members of the legislature get involved. And if anyone else from Congress runs, well, they'd be going up against Congressman Hearn and his $5 million, which would be a heavy lift, I think, for anybody. This question was also discussed this week on KOSU's This Week in Oklahoma Politics. I'm on that show, of course, every week, and this week I was joined by former State Senator A.J. Griffin, a friend of Let's Pod This as well, and we discussed the very same thing, because when big news happens in Oklahoma politics, it's on all the shows. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, decisions are made by those who show up. Have a great week.